The more pills, the better.
That's right.
Greetings and welcome to Old Drunken Discography. We're all friends, fans, come together to BS, argue, occasionally agree, and discuss a musical artist. This week's musical artist is the Beastie Boys. It was brought to you by Bill. That's Bill.
Threw away the best porno bag.
Also with me, I'm Jason, is Tim.
Got more rhymes than Abe Vigoda.
And our special guest who was actually invited this time, Tony.
It.
And we'll be going through 8 albums with some notable releases along the way. If you'd like to choose an artist for us to cover, along with some other cool perks, check out our Patreon. Maybe even join us on the show. With that, all that crap out the way, we're just going to jump into it. Well, I've been excited to get to this one. Brief history, relationship with the band. For me, the Beastie Boys have just always kind of been there. License to Ill was one of the first cassettes that I owned. And I've just kind of followed them along throughout the years. So it didn't have to do a lot of research on this one. I knew all these records. What about you, Tim?
Pretty similar. License to Ill came out when I was a single digit lad, and it blew my mind. It blew the neighborhood's mind. It was everywhere. Um, uh, my vinyl selection here is going to be pretty slim on these, but I'm also one of those fans. Like I bought the book, and I've got DVDs, and I've got singles on CD and stuff, and so I'm not like the biggest fan, but I've definitely thrown some money their way over the years.
I'll say I didn't hear License to Ill until 88, 89.
Oh yeah, 80, 86, 87. It was that. It was Raising Hell. It was Push It by Salt and Peppa. Um,
That's all like 89 for me.
oh yeah, yeah. We me and my group of friends were really into that early Def Jam stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Beastie Boys, one of the earliest albums I remember. I remember my older brother had it. And I was young, and I've been a pretty diehard fan. I've seen them live. Uh, they're pretty, I grew up in New York, so they're a quintessential part of New York. And yeah, just glad to be here.
What about you, Bill?
Well, so obviously younger side here. Uh, let's see. First song that I heard by them would have been No Sleep Till Brooklyn, which one of the bigger singles, and it was definitely still being played in the 2000s. From there, I went back even 2025.
Yeah,
Um,
100%.
so I went back and I listened to a number of their singles then. Uh, when I was not out in college is when I started listening to a lot of the singles, like a lot of these bands. Just to see what else they did as singles. I didn't actually listen to any of these albums the whole way through prior to this. I was familiar with songs across all of these albums except for two.
Okay.
Should
Well, it'll be
we?
real interesting to get your take then,
Yeah, I think Bill should start
because
us
like,
off.
yeah, because I've got so many life memories intrinsically tied to these albums.
All right, so License to Ill, when I was listening through on this one, I definitely, you know, I love the whole like rock undertone and almost like reminiscent of older songs as I'm sitting here listening as like the backbeat. And that I mean, I was never a big rap guy, but I could definitely listen to some Beastie Boys here on License to Ill. Rhymin' and Stealin' I felt was one hell of an opening track for them as a whole discography. Not many bands are successful as they would be on that track. I really liked some of the beat changes and She's Crafty coming through. I thought that was a phenomenal song. Uh I mean, besides that's a bunch of singles and all of those are phenomenal. Um Finishing up Time to Get Ill, I thought that was a great closer. I, you know, well, I'll bring it up when we get to later albums. I really like how across all these songs, and they usually do a great job. It's not like they just have one, not just MCA, sitting there, doing all the vocals or anything. Like they try and divvy it up, I think, quite well because each vocalist has their part that they're stronger at, and like they do it phenomenally well. For me, actually, Paul Revere is one of my favorite songs off of this album now. Uh, I mean, that being said, She's Crafty and Posse Effect. Anytime they want, they can come on. Uh, and then, yeah, shit. Any of the singles, just let them go.
I got a gorgeous marble color reissue of this one.
So this is definitely an album. If I ever get an opportunity to get this one on vinyl, absolutely gonna get it.
I mean, they sold it at Target.
Yeah, it'll never go out of print.
Yeah. I'll run through my notes. I've had a really shit week, so I ain't got many notes, but rhyming and stealing right off the bat, when that low bass kicks in, you're hooked, flat out. Opening lines of the discography are because Mutiny on the Bounty is what we're all about. I'm gonna board your ship and turn it on out. Turn it on out. 5 out of 5. Who doesn't like rhyming and stealing? Yo ho ho and a pint of Brass Monkey. The new style. So many bands and artists have been influenced by this record. Even Beck's Odelay has some License to Ill influence. She's Crafty's always been a favorite. I love the guitar riff. Yeah, it's a little problematic. But 10 years old in 1990. A lot of shit went over our heads. We just sang along. The chorus has been in my head ever since. It's so catchy. Posse in Effect. Really the whole album. Just in my head. This one doesn't leave you. I mean, come on, Slow Ride. I shot Homeboy, but the bullet was a dud, so I reached in the Miller Cooler, grabbed a Cool Bud, top song contender. Girls, kind of the same with She's Crafty. Always has, always will be a favorite of mine. I love how they start cracking up about halfway in. They just like fucking just let it roll. Jock It Might D to my dismay. Super fucking problematic, but I mean, come on. Fuck it. Fight for Your Right, Kick It, still a banger, iconic riff. No Sleep Till Brooklyn. Still a fucking banger, iconic riff. Paul Revere. Now here's a little story. I mean, beautiful storytelling. Yo Leroy, what's the time? It's time to buy ale. Hold it now, hit it. Brass Monkey, I'll spoil it now. My favorite song in the discography. There's probably dozens and dozens of better Beastie Boys songs, but nostalgia plays a part 100% in this song. This was the reason we bought the album back in the day. When someone mentions the Beastie Boys, the first thing I think of is Brass Monkey. I fucking love that song. Slow and Low, another iconic Liz in my head Beastie Boys top song contender. Time to Get Ill. When someone asks you what's the time, you must always respond with it's time to get ill. Literally the day.
Unless it's time to get ale.
Well, yeah. The day I was writing my notes a few hours ago, my kid said, "What's the time?" And I had to respond. You got Mr. Ed mixed in here, fucking top song contender and running for best in the discography for closing track. This is a near flawless album from start to finish. It's hard to believe that this was their debut.
It's not often you come across a band's debut album that just straight up kicks ass. And I mean, we talk about first album bias when we get to ranking stuff later. I mean, this one makes the case like you don't even need first album bias when it's a phenomenal album.
Well, and I'll throw out that this wasn't their first Def Jam release. They did put out a 12-inch single called Rock Hard before this that you cannot get anymore because they sampled Back in Black and AC/DC put the kibosh on it. So if you can find Rock Hard, pick it up. Um,
It was
but with
hard to
that being
sample
said,
shit in
and
the '80s. Like there was a lot of like fighting.
well, and that being said, starts off with the When the Levee Breaks and Sweet Leaf, like um, rhyming and stealing. Um, and we'll get into it more, obviously, with the next album that changed the entire industry. Um, but I forgot how much Zeppelin was on this album too. Can't get away with that anymore. Um, yeah, Ryman and Steelin's classic. Um, I was watching Chuck D and LL Cool J induct the Beastie Boys into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame earlier today. I had to look; it was done 3 weeks before Yauk passed. So he wasn't present, but he was there in spirit. Um, but Chuck kind of mentioned that, like if Run DMC took this fledgling new genre called hip hop to the outskirts of town, this is the album that drove it straight into the middle of the city. It was the first platinum hip hop album. It was the first #1 hip hop album. Um, and really, it's certified banger. If this doesn't get your party turned out, I don't know what will. Uh,
Nothing will.
no, yeah, if you can't get it to this, go home. The new style is amazing. She's crafty is amazing. The posse in effect, like yeah. Um, Slow ride, that's like that's one of my personal favorites. Girls, obviously, and then you get the singles, Fight for Your Right, No Sleep Till Brooklyn. That is Kerry King from Slayer doing the guitar solos on No Sleep Till Brooklyn. I think he got paid $300 to do it and is still very bitter about it. Um, Paul Revere, I mean, that's not just like one of the best Beastie Boys songs. That's one of the greatest hip hop songs. That's one of the greatest songs ever.
Period.
It is so good. I mean, it's just a classic. Um, Hold It Now, Hit It. Uh, Amazing, amazing song. I love the beat on that. You could, um, as I mentioned earlier, I do have the book. I've read it a couple times now, and they really talk about how that was the song that really propelled them into being artists. Um, Brass Monkey, yeah, Jason kind of said it. Like, that's a banger. Slow and Low, banger. Time to Get Ill, banger. Yeah, this thing will turn your party out. It's produced by Rick Rubin. This put Rick Rubin on the map. He
Yeah.
was their DJ for the tour, opening for Madonna on the Like a Virgin tour. Um, yeah, I mean it's a classic slab of '80s hip hop that continues to push the envelope while still retaining that classic '80s sound.
Yeah, I
And they're
mean,
all what, 18, 19 when they do this?
they
I
were.
say they were teenagers, right?
This is a bunch of kids who played hardcore New York punk rock in punk
Mhm.
rock bands, and
Yep.
they made a fun song which we'll listen to later about this rap phenomenon that was happening in New York, and you see this is like almost like a capture of that time where rap was it was sampling disco records and other
Yeah.
records,
Yeah.
and then a DJ
And
would
house
spin
parties.
it. Yep, they would pick apart, they would spin it, scratch it, and some MCs would rhyme over it, and then so these kids started messing around with this new thing that was going down in the Bronx, and it'd been around for a couple of years, and they thought it was funny. They made a funny song, and people really liked it, and then they met Rick Rubin, and they started going with it. This album was made almost as a joke. Uh, MCA came out years later, before he passed with Buddhism. There's a lot of stuff he regrets on this album. He came
Sure.
through. Like, most of the stuff that Vinyl pointed out, he's like, yeah, we were kids, or,
Right. It
then,
was a
but
different time and a different.
different world.
But yeah,
And listening to these albums, I can only imagine, and Tony, maybe you can talk to this, but New York City from like 76 to 86
yeah,
was just one of the best cultural events in human history.
it was a raw place.
Sure, Lower East Side was looked like
Mhm.
post-war England.
Yeah, and that's where these kids were playing in basements and clubs.
Yeah.
I mean, they come out with it. These songs, like I said, nearly perfect album. Bryman and Stealing, it drops in, and you're immediately hit with what you will find for the rest of the Beastie Boys. Their style of lyric, one after another. There's nobody doing verses for 10 minutes to the next guy. It's hit a rhyme, at Rock's going, and NCA's going, Mike D. They're going back and forth. They're dropping in hooks. They're doing crazy shit on the new style. No one who else you feel the beat. Drop. And then changing the whole fucking song after that. Like, this is just the things that they did. They were always just a
And
little
how
different.
classic hip hop is that?
Yeah, it's how it was done back then, and they just did it a little different. And then you hear another thing you'll hear from the Beastie Boys for the rest of their career. Songs like "Fight for Your Right to Party" and "No Sleep Till Brooklyn," where those guitars and drums are coming in, and you don't know, is this the rock song? What's going on here? And they just did
Sabotage.
it. Yeah,
Well,
Sabotage. They
and
did it
I
perfect.
will throw out that I do believe it's Rick Rubin playing the guitar on
I
Fight for Your
believe he
Right.
does. I do believe he plays guitar with some of them.
Yeah, like at least the rhythm track. Of course, Kerry King does the solo, but yeah, Ad Rock is not doing the guitars on here. He's actually coming up with a lot of the drum beats.
Yeah. I mean, you listen to Paul Revere, that could be a fucking play.
Sure.
You know, you could put that into a musical. It's just a complete story, and I'd watch the shit out of it. I remember listening to Brass Monkey while drinking Brass Monkey, which I don't think they make anymore
No,
because it
They
was
no, they
don't.
really really bad.
People have
Uh,
asked me as a bar owner, they do not make it.
yeah,
Where's our
that
Broadway musical of Paul Revere?
Oh, and I
let's go.
did going back and listening to this album for this, I did want to count how many White Castle references were on here.
Oh, like I said, these are some iconic New Yorkers, and they
Sure.
talk about things. I just were part of New York culture back then. White Castle
Mhm.
fries only come in one size. It seems weird, but in Paul Revere, I did it like this. I did it like that. I did it with a wiffle ball bat. We played wiffle ball all day. That's what you did, you know. And yeah, it's one of the things. I mean, that I being from there and growing up there, this was like this was a quintessential thing for us.
I
And
mean,
this
I
is
was in
one of the
Pensacola, Florida at like 12 years old or 11, 10 years old listening to this. And it's just a fun fucking album. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
it's
You
just a
you
fun
put
record.
so many of these albums are gonna be you can just put the album on at a party and you can walk away. You can just let it go.
Yeah.
And no one will complain. And if they do, they
Now,
need to leave.
Pretty much.
All right.
Pretty much. But again, after 40 years, who's complaining at this point?
People who have no musical taste.
I
Well, they
mean,
didn't get
hell,
the invite to the party to begin with. So,
Because
Eminem made a record and he copied the album.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
he's smart. He
Yeah.
knows what works.
A lot of people, a lot of genres have copied,
This.
have taken from the Beastie Boys.
Oh yeah.
I mean, anything else to add? We're just flowing on this motherfucker all night.
My posse's getting big and my posse's getting bigger.
No, I mean we talk about how it's put up the perfect memes. It's just that good.
We'll get to that album art too. That's pretty classic. Yeah, so It's automatically number one for now because it's the only one we talked about. We'll see if anybody has first album bias or not. Like I said, I got a lot of nostalgia tied with this motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
30-something
I'll tell you right
years.
now, though, I probably have a hot take with my ranking.
Mix up
Everybody,
number one.
In Sounds from the Way Out, number one, but that's a whole nother story.
I was saying earlier, I searched for this on vinyl for years before they reprinted it. I couldn't find it anywhere, and I found places that selling it $300. You know, and it was like it was my white whale for so long.
It's
Is
on
the
Amazon for
are the repressings still on Def Jam?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
I mean, Amazon's got this one right now. It's like a marbled red. Sounds fucking phenomenal. I mean, Beastie vinyl was expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're all the deluxe editions at this point, right?
Yep.
No, this is just standard.
Yeah.
Well, other than this one, there never was a deluxe edition of this.
which I think we're going to get to when
Yeah.
we talked about some later albums. Like, what is the actual track list? I'm interested to see compared to what I listened to versus what we got written down.
Well, that's your own fault for going to YouTube for your track list.
I know.
All right. Up next, Paul's Revere. Or sorry, Paul's Boutique.
Paul's Revere.
It's confusing.
Stick around for that. Give us a like, give us a subscribe. Let us know if you like the Beastie Boys down below. No, better yet, let us know down below if you don't like the Beastie Boys.
And why?
And why.
Why do you hate life?
And then you can come on our show as a live stream and it will argue against us for the Beastie Boys. We'll see how that goes. Anyway, as always, be safe and make good decisions. Drink Brass Monkey.
Funky monkey.
Brass monkey, that funky monkey. Brass monkey, junkie, that funky monkey.
And then you go a little woo, and then a little whoop, 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 and then it's all, and then you're ready to go again.